Daniel Brooks had never asked for much out of life. A modest man in his late 30s, he spent most of his days under the hood of broken cars at his small repair shop in town, and his evenings cooking simple dinners for his 8-year-old daughter, Emily. Since his wife had passed away years earlier, he had lived in a rhythm of quiet sacrifice, making sure Emily never went to bed hungry, never felt unloved, and always believed her dad was strong enough to protect her from anything. The truth was, Daniel carried a heaviness he rarely admitted even to himself. There were nights when he sat in the worn-out armchair by the fireplace, staring into the flames, wondering if he was doing enough, if Emily deserved better than a father who was always tired, who sometimes had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying her new shoes. Yet whenever she smiled, when she ran to hug him after school, all those doubts melted away. He was her dad, her hero, even if the rest of the world never noticed. The only constant companion aside from Emily was Ranger, a big German shepherd with alert amber eyes and a nose that seemed to sense danger long before Daniel ever could. Ranger had been astray when Daniel found him years ago, limping near the junkyard, ribs showing through his coat. Daniel had taken him in, patched him up, and ever since, Ranger had become part of the family, loyal, protective, and often the reason Daniel felt safe leaving Emily at home when he had to step out at night. On that fateful evening, the rain came down in heavy sheets, drumming against the cabin roof and turning the dirt road outside into a river of mud. Emily had already gone to bed, her small form curled beneath blankets decorated with faded cartoon stars. Daniel, restless from the storm, decided to take Ranger out for a quick walk. He tugged on his old jacket, grabbed the flashlight that barely worked, and stepped into the cold night with his dog trotting beside him. The woods around their cabin were usually peaceful, filled with the chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves, but that night the storm drowned out everything. Wind howled through the pines, branches cracked in the distance, and lightning split the sky like jagged glass. Ranger's ears perked up, his body stiffening. Daniel slowed his steps. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, scanning the dark forest with his flickering light. That's when he heard it, faint at first, almost hidden beneath the rain. A metallic crunch, the sound of something heavy collapsing. Then came the groan of twisting metal, and finally, silence. Daniel frowned. Out here, miles away from the main highway, it was rare to hear any vehicle, let alone the unmistakable sound of a crash. He started forward, Ranger leading the way, his nose to the ground. After several minutes of trudging through wet brush, Daniel spotted it, a set of tire tracks gouged deep into the mud, leading down a slope into the woods. At the bottom, illuminated in flashes of lightning, lay a car. No, not just any car. A police cruiser. The vehicle was overturned on its side, steam rising from the smashed engine. The red and blue lights faintly flickering like a dying heartbeat. Daniel's stomach knotted. He scrambled down the slope, slipping in the mud, until he reached the wreck. Glass littered the ground, rain washing over blood smeared across the door. Inside, slumped against the shattered window, was a woman in a torn police uniform. Her chest rose and fell faintly, her breath shallow, face pale from blood loss. "Jesus!" Daniel whispered, pulling at the twisted door. Ranger barked sharply, circling the wreck, as if urging him to hurry. Daniel finally pried it open enough to squeeze inside. The officer's eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. She tried to speak, but coughed, blood trickling down her lips. "Don't move," Daniel said quickly, pressing a hand against her shoulder to keep her steady. "You're hurt bad. I'm going to get you out of here." Her hand shot up weakly, grabbing his wrist. They'll come back," she rasped, her voice strained. "Don't let them find me." "Who?" Daniel asked, glancing into the stormy darkness. "Who's after you?" But her eyes rolled back, her strength failing. She slumped again, and Daniel realized he had no time to waste. He checked her pulse, weak but there. Looking around, he saw no headlights, no signs of help. If she stayed here, she'd bleed out. With a grunt, Daniel hooked his arms under her and pulled her free of the wreck. She wasn't heavy, but the mud made every step treacherous. Ranger barked once more, and together they began the climb back up the slope. Daniel's heart pounded. Every crack of thunder made him flinch, not just from the storm, but from the thought of whoever they were that the officer had warned about. When they reached the trail, Daniel adjusted her weight against his shoulder and trudged toward his cabin. Emily was inside, asleep. He hesitated for a split second. Bringing a wounded stranger home could put his daughter in danger, but leaving the officer out here would mean certain death. He made his choice. "Come on, Ranger," he muttered. "We're not letting her die tonight." The dog trotted ahead, ears twitching, as Daniel carried the unconscious cop through the rain-soaked woods. He didn't know her name, her story, or the storm of danger that followed her. All he knew was that his quiet life, his fragile sense of safety, was about to be shattered forever. The first thing Officer Sarah Miller felt when she woke was the crushing weight in her chest, as if someone had strapped a boulder onto her ribs. The second thing was warmth, the crackle of fire somewhere nearby, the smell of wood smoke cutting through the iron tang of blood. Her eyelids fluttered, and blurry shapes began to take form. A low ceiling, a wooden beam, a blanket covering her body. She wasn't dead. That realization was both comforting and terrifying. A man's voice broke through the haze. "Easy now. Don't try to move too fast. You're safe for now." Sarah's gaze shifted and she saw him, rugged face lined with exhaustion, a bandage in his hands stained from patching her wounds. Behind him, a large German shepherd sat at full attention, eyes locked on the door as though expecting an enemy at any moment. "You pulled me out," she whispered, her throat raw. "Why?" The man shrugged, almost uncomfortable with the question. "Didn't seem right to leave you there. Name's Daniel. This here's Ranger. You were bleeding out in the middle of nowhere. Figured you'd want a fighting chance." Sarah tried to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through her side. She remembered flashes of the crash, the ambush, the headlights behind her before everything spun into chaos. Her hand instinctively went to her belt, but her gun was gone. She tensed. "Where is it?" "My weapon." "Relax," Daniel said quickly, holding up a small bundle. "Found it in the mud near your car. It's not loaded. Bullets were scattered everywhere. Didn't want my kid finding it." Sarah's sharp gaze flicked to the side, where a little girl's drawings were taped to the cabin wall. For a moment her expression softened. "You have a daughter." "Yeah, Emily, she's asleep. She doesn't know you're here yet." Daniel hesitated, then added, "And I'd like to keep it that way, at least until I figure out what kind of trouble you're in." Sarah exhaled shakily. "You don't understand. They'll come. The men who ran me off the road, they won't stop. If they find me here, they'll kill anyone in their way, including you, including your daughter." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then maybe we make sure they don't find you." Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the low rumble of thunder outside. Ranger's ears twitched. He growled, a deep sound that vibrated through the floorboards. Daniel's head snapped toward the window. He'd lived in these woods long enough to know the difference between the random noises of nature and the deliberate snap of a branch under human weight. "They're here already," Sarah whispered, clutching the blanket. Daniel moved quickly, checking the shotgun he kept hidden by the fireplace. It was an old hunting piece, 2 shells in the chamber. Not nearly enough for what he was about to face. He looked at Sarah, pale and trembling, and then at Ranger, whose hackles stood on end. "All right," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "If they want to fight, they picked the wrong house." The next moments were a blur of instinct. Daniel doused the fire to dim the cabin's glow. He moved Emily quietly from her bedroom to a small hidden crawl space he had built years ago, a safe nook in case of storms or intruders. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "Stay here. Don't come out until I say." Her sleepy eyes blinked at him, but she nodded, trusting her father without question. Back in the main room, he crouched near the window, shotgun in hand. Through the rain and darkness, he saw them. 3 men moving through the trees, dressed in black, their movements too precise for ordinary criminals. One carried a rifle with a scope, another a machete strapped to his leg, the third sweeping a flashlight in slow arcs. They were hunting. Sarah tried to push herself up. "They're after a drive. Evidence. It's hidden in my cruiser. They'll tear this place apart to find it." Daniel grimaced. He had a choice to make. Abandon this fight, take Emily and flee deeper into the forest, or stand his ground and protect his home. Running meant leaving a wounded cop to be executed. Staying meant risking everything. He tightened his grip on the shotgun. He was a father before anything else, and fathers protect. Ranger growled again, low and steady. Daniel leaned close to the dog, whispering, "On my word." The first intruder crept closer, his silhouette barely visible. Daniel waited, breath frozen in his chest, until the man stepped within a dozen yards. Then, with a sharp whistle, Ranger lunged through the doorway like a shadow. The man shouted in surprise, rifle jerking upward, but Ranger's weight slammed into him, teeth sinking into his arm. Gunfire erupted, deafening inside the storm, muzzle flashes lighting the trees. Daniel fired once, the shotgun blast tearing through the night. Chaos exploded outside. The second man yelled, dragging his comrade back, while the third swept his light toward the cabin. Bullets tore into the wooden walls, splinters flying. Sarah flinched, pressing herself against the floor. Daniel grabbed her by the arm, dragging her toward the back of the cabin. "We can't stay here." Where do we go?" she gasped. "The workshop," Daniel said. "It's got tools. Metal, chains, traps. If they want a fight, we'll give them one." Ranger bounded back inside, muzzle wet with blood, eyes blazing. He barked once, sharp and commanding, as if urging them to move faster. Daniel didn't hesitate. He hauled Sarah to her feet, slung her arm over his shoulder, and together they stumbled through the back door into the rain. Behind them, the cabin that had been their sanctuary was no longer safe. Shadows moved between lightning strikes, men closing in, their voices carried by the storm. And ahead, in the workshop's darkness, Daniel knew he would have to become something he never imagined. Not just a father, not just a mechanic, but a man ready to outsmart trained killers to keep his daughter safe. And for the first time in years, a spark of something fierce burned in his chest. He would not run. He would fight.